In Colorado, you don't actually have to be separated before filing for divorce. Once you file, there's a 91-day waiting period before you can actually get a decree of dissolution, which is what actually terminates the marriage. For example, I have clients that file for divorce but still live in the same home because that, as their marital home, until the court decides the allocation of who's going to be receiving the home and where the parties are going to live, they have no choice but to live together. Getting a temporary housing situation depends on the facts and circumstances of your situation. If you believe that you're in danger, you should get a temporary housing situation. If you feel you can get through the process without either party posing a risk to the other, then living in the same home probably will not be an issue until the end of the divorce process. The question of whether or not Colorado is a 50-50 state comes up all the time, and the answer is actually no. Colorado is not. It is an equitable distribution state. And what that means is that the court is required to allocate the assets fairly, equitably to the parties, but not necessarily equal. So that is different than a community property state where everything is distributed on a 50-50 basis. For example, if you have one spouse who's been the primary earner throughout the marriage may have a retirement plan with a significant amount of assets while the other spouse has much less. The court may allocate more of those retirement assets to the spouse without them because that spouse doesn't have the ability to earn as much going forward. This court may also allocate additional proceeds from the sale of the marital home or from the bank accounts, whatever assets are available. At the same time, the debts could be allocated to the spouse who earns more income. So the court's focus is fairness, what's going to be fair for the parties based on their circumstances. Gender is not an issue for the court when allocating assets in a dissolution case. The bottom line is it must be equitable to the parties, which basically means fair to everybody involved in the case. Neither party is automatically entitled to more time with the children than the other. Both parties are entitled to parent their children, and the courts will fashion a parenting plan that is in the best interest of the children. And that is the key factor that is considered by the courts and should be considered by the parties. What is in the children's best interest? Many times we get calls from potential clients who indicate that they have what's known as an uncontested situation. In essence, they agree on everything. That typically doesn't turn out to be the case. Up front, people believe that there's an agreement because they've agreed to get divorced. But then there's a lot of little things that come up where the disagreements start happening. I recommend that everybody have an attorney going into the process. It'll typically streamline it. You'll get through it quicker. You'll get through it more efficiently, and your rights will be protected. I have clients who come to me late in the process and it ends up taking longer because we have to go back and fix issues that took place earlier in the case that are now causing the court to make decisions that are not consistent with the person's desires or goals, which is why we choose to pursue our clients' goals from the very beginning. That's our primary focus throughout the case. You don't save money by not getting an attorney involved sooner in the case. I believe it actually becomes more expensive because the attorney will have to back up and fix some of the things that have gone wrong. At New Leaf, that's an issue we've taken seriously and do things somewhat differently because we don't bill by the hour. Therefore, going back and correcting issues may not be more expensive because we set our billing up so that it's predictable for our clients. You know exactly how much it's going to cost each month, and you don't have to worry about surprise bills because of extra charges for hours that were incurred fixing things that occurred long before you finally retained an attorney. If you have any questions about divorce in Colorado, please feel free to book a free case evaluation with our NewLeaf family team.